Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 57 of Diehlman at Halftime, the NBA podcast that tops all others. I'm your host, Larry Diehlman. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome aboard, and if you've been a loyal listener, welcome back. We have much to get to today and not a lot of time to do it. We have 5 sections that we'll get into: a general overview of the NBA this week, and our usual highlight, lowlight, random stat, and game of the week. Let's get to our content for the week. As we've discussed previously, the Dallas Mavericks are having a nightmare season, and it may be getting worse. According to NBA insider Bobby Marks, the Mavericks could likely become the first team in NBA history to have to forfeit upcoming games due to lack of players and salary cap issues. They might fall below the 8-player minimum. Dallas has 3 two-way G League players on their roster, meaning they can go back and forth between the Mavericks and their G League affiliate, the Texas Legends. Two-way players can only play a maximum of 50 NBA games per season. 2 of those 3 players have under 10 games of eligibility left. The Mavericks also don't have any cap space flexibility to sign emergency players. They're under the first apron hard cap by $51,000. In layman's terms, they're screwed, although I might be able to squeeze them into my schedule. They can't sign players until April 10th, which is when the season is basically over. To add more salt in the wound, Dallas is a game and a half over Phoenix for the last play-in tournament seed. The Mavericks' best option would be to lose out and miss the playoffs. Just stop the bleeding. The San Antonio Spurs took another hit this week in the injury department. Star guard De'Aaron Fox, who they acquired from Sacramento at the trade deadline, had season-ending surgery to repair tendon damage in his left pinky. He's played through the injury since October, when he suffered the injury in Kings training camp. We've already discussed the Spurs being without Victor Wembanyama, who has deep vein thrombosis, and head coach Greg Popovich, who had a mild stroke in November. San Antonio is currently tied for 12th in the Western Conference and 3.5 games out of the final play-in tournament seed. Finally, it seems like Steph Curry will be busy on and off the court. It was announced last Monday that the Golden State Warriors star will be working as an assistant general manager for the basketball teams at his alma mater, Davidson College, located in North Carolina. Curry is the first active player in U.S. major professional sports to take an administrative position with an NCAA team. He'll work alongside general manager and former Under Armour Global Sports Marketing team member Austin Bunce. Curry's association with Under Armour is already well known. One of his tasks at Davidson will be starting an 8-figure fund for both basketball programs with help from his wife Ayesha and a few Davidson supporters. Curry is in Davidson's Hall of Fame. Since it is St. Patrick's Day, I figured it would be appropriate. This episode is entitled Striking Gold. So, who's raising eyebrows at the moment? Let's go to our highlight, the Boston Celtics. One could argue that some championship-winning teams aren't cut from the same cloth as others. They got lucky, fans say. It's a Mickey Mouse ring, said fans in 2020. This isn't the case of the Boston Celtics. The Celtics are 49-19 and second in the Eastern Conference. Despite teams like Cleveland and Oklahoma City dominating their respective conferences, you can't overlook the defending champions. The star of Beantown is Jason Tatum, who's averaging 27.1 points, 8.7 rebounds, and almost 6 assists per game. Jaylen Brown's 22.8 points, among other things, make the tandem deadly. Just last year, Brown was named Finals MVP. Although Kristaps Porzingis has only played 33 games this season, his presence in the paint cannot be underestimated. Add in defensive guards like Drew Holiday and Derek White, and shooter Peyton Pritchard, who's averaging 14.1 points off the bench, the only time in his career putting up more than 10 a night, and you have a ridiculous lineup. Boston is by no stretch guaranteed to hoist another Larry O'Brien trophy in June, but they might be one of the scariest teams heading into the postseason. Their next game is tomorrow, Tuesday, March 18th at 7:30. They will host the Brooklyn Nets. To get more insight into our highlight this week, we have our ninth guest on Diehlman at Halftime Season 2. Let's get into it. So for our ninth guest of Season 2 on the Diehlman at Halftime podcast, we welcome Aaron Hook. Aaron is a freelance play-by-play broadcaster and sideline reporter. He currently works for organizations such as the Delaware Bluecoats, the G League affiliate of the Philadelphia 76ers, the University of Pennsylvania, Newman University, and the Philadelphia Hockey Club. Aaron is a 2024 graduate of Rowan University with a bachelor's in sports communication and media. Aaron, how are we doing today?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a while. I kept telling Aaron in recent weeks, I'm like, I haven't forgotten about you. We had you on last season, but I promised to get him back, and here we are. Aaron, I wanted to get your thoughts on the Boston Celtics. They are our highlight for the week, and they are looking to be a favorite going into the postseason. So my first question for you, what were your thoughts on the Celtics winning the title last season? Was it basically their year? What were some factors that impressed you about that title run?
Yeah, I mean, you had sort of with Tatum and Brown being there, Larry, and with Boston continuing to add pieces over the years, you sort of thought that at some point they would break through. And that was sort of the narrative around the league, because they had been good for a number of years, but had just not been able to obviously win the championship. They got to the finals in 2022 against Golden State, but it was sort of like if they don't win a title in this window where you have Tatum and Brown in their primes, and you add pieces such as a Derek White and a Kristaps Porzingis and a Drew Holiday, like it would have been a failure. So, for me, was it surprising that Boston won the title last year? Absolutely not. I mean, 64 wins, a fantastic season, top five in scoring and defense, number one in offensive rating, third in defensive rating, first in net last year. And, you sort of look at their path to the postseason. They get Miami in the first round, they get a Cleveland team in the second round that, wasn't quite ready. I think we've seen this season that the Cavs have made that leap. So 4-1 in both series. And then, they did Indiana in the conference finals, who beat an injured Knicks team to get there. And, no doubt the Pacers had a nice run last season and they were probably deserving of a conference finals run. But, they sweep Indiana and then they beat Dallas in the finals 4-1. So, I mean, they go 16-3 in the playoffs last year. They were absolutely dominant. No surprise. I mean, coming in, I would have to backtrack on some of the odds to see if they were the actual favorite coming in. I would have to assume they were right up there if they actually were not the favorite. But I mean, you have Jason Tatum finishing sixth in the MVP voting, hit a ton of huge shots throughout the year. And you just looked up and down the roster, guys contributed, right? The thing about Boston is they have their stars, but they're also a really deep, versatile team. So last year just ended up being their year. And I mean, they add another title. As you know, Larry, they're besides for the Lakers, they're the most celebrated franchise in the NBA for sure.
Yeah, with the 18th banner, they actually are the most successful franchise in league history, and the Lakers are right behind them. But you had some good points that they pretty much steamrolled their competition last year in the postseason. I mean, it wasn't really even close for most of those series. They swept the Pacers and the Mavericks. They swept them aside, which indirectly led to the Luka Doncic blockbuster trade. But I think in a way, like maybe it was their year last year. Like you said, they have such a plethora of talent, and the narrative of break up Tatum and Brown, they're never going to get it done. Well, there you go. They got their ring, and Boston is once again a champion. So my next point, before last season, the Celtics added Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, which you alluded to a moment ago. They were cast off from the Bucks and Wizards respectively. What kind of effect do players like them make on a contender, especially one like Boston?
Yeah, I mean, I think you use a really good term when you say cast off, right? Especially Porzingis, because he had some down years in Dallas after dealing with injuries, obviously early in his career. He goes to Washington, a bad team, and he has sort of a career year there where he plays a full season with Washington, 65 games in 22-23, puts up 23 and 8 a night, shoots the three ball at a 38% clip and sort of gets back into the form that he was at late in his Knicks career when he was coming up. And, he looked really healthy. And so, I mean, the Celtics front office has done just such a good job. Obviously, you had Danny Ainge there and now he's in Utah. But, since then with Brad Stevens taking over, he hasn't really missed a beat. I mean, the Celtics have been able to make really good acquisitions, whether it's via the trade or finding guys who were sort of, again, like you said, Larry, sort of like cast off to the wayside, right? No one wanted anything to do with them. And I just will get into that later. And that's sort of touching back on the depth that the Celtics team has. Porzingis obviously hasn't been healthy this season, but when you look at his impact, obviously the ability for him to step out and shoot the three-pointer at his size is massive. The fact that he can be a rim protector along with that just gives the Celtics such an identity defensively, right? I mean, when you have a great rim protector, that allows your elite perimeter guys like Jason Tatum, like Derek White, and like Drew Holiday, who they also acquired, to go out there and just play with confidence, right? You can sort of get a little overzealous out there. You can go for more steals in the lane when you have a great rim protector underneath, and that is what Porzingis provides. So as a Knicks fan who saw Porzingis get booed on draft night and then, ascend towards stardom, it looked like, then got hurt and worked his way back to becoming a champion. It's been a nice arc to follow in his career, and he provides a lot for that Celtics team when he's healthy. And then Drew Holiday, I mean, he's one of the best defensive players in the NBA. I mean, no doubt about it. And so when the Celtics were able to get him from the Bucks, I was a little surprised, honestly, because you look at the last year in Milwaukee for Drew, he's an all-star and he averages 19 a game with Milwaukee, 7.5 assists. Like, he's taken a little bit more of a reduced role in Boston. He's delegated to the stars in Tatum and Brown, but he's still just as effective defensively. And when he is relied on offensively, Larry, it's not like he's really lost much in that department either. He's obviously starting to slow down a little bit in terms of just the scoring volume. And again, he has sort of taken a back seat to some of the guys they have. But at the same time, I mean, in that championship year last season for Boston, he shoots 43% from three, right? So it's like it's almost unfair for a Celtics team that was already a contender with the two young stars to go out and add two guys like that. And really, I mean, when they're healthy, Larry, in my opinion, I think they're right up there with the best starting fives in the NBA. Again, that's just one layer of it because they have the depth off the bench. But when you talk about making additions for Holiday and Porzingis, the one thing with Porzingis was you were sort of waiting to see if he could play winning or championship basketball, I should say. Hadn't really done it at that level in his career, but he obviously fit perfectly with the championship squad last season.
Like we were saying, like they were basically cast off from the Bucks and the Wizards, and I don't know what the Wizards are doing these days, but now you see what Porzingis is doing on a real team, and it's just been great to watch him thrive. And Drew Holiday being on that Bucks championship team, and now he's on the Celtics. And you might think, well, wait a minute, now why did they trade Drew Holiday in conference? But he wasn't. He was traded to Portland, and then he was traded to Boston. That was the Damian Lillard, that whole thing. So I think we're seeing the Bucks. They're missing that defensive piece in Holiday. Porzingis could have really helped the Wizards right now, but you put him next to Tatum and Brown, and you put them in the same room as Joe Mazzulla, and we're seeing the effect that they have on this team as they're pretty much one of the favorites right now. So next, there have been plenty of discussions lately about who can be the face of the league. Many on social media are Jason Tatum haters because of his corniness. How would you rank Tatum among the NBA's elite players? For example, top 5, top 10, whatever. What are your thoughts on the face of the league arguments?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one thing if you have a personal, if you don't like Jason Tatum off the floor. I don't know why you would, right? I mean, even for me as an in-conference, like I root for the Knicks. They're an in-conference opponent, rival of the Celtics, right? There's really no reason personally dislike Jason Tatum. I think he says a lot of the right things almost all of the time. His career arc has, I think, been really cool to follow, right? I mean, the one great year at Duke comes out as the third overall pick. Through his first 2 years, he starts a little slow, Larry, was sort of some questions, could he develop into a star? You always sort of saw it, but he's climbed the ladder now over the last 3 years, averaging 30, 27, and then 27 again this season to become a legitimate, MVP candidate. And he is one of the faces of the league, no doubt. I mean, I'm forgetting who said it, so forgive me, Larry, but someone called him the best American born star right now. And it's probably true, right? I mean, Tatum, for me, I think you absolutely have a valid argument to put him in the top five in the NBA right now because he's obviously an elite scorer on pretty great efficiency. The 3-point shooting has been a little up and down for him this season, but he shoots it at a crazy volume. So you'll live with 35% on 10 attempts, right? And when he gets hot, it's like, you know what I mean? It's like the percentage doesn't really matter. If he gets on a heater, you're not going to slow him down. 27 points with basically 9 rebounds, 6 assists, and a steal per game. His length, at 6'8" or 6'9", really allows him to be really disruptive defensively. He's a great perimeter defender. He can also be a little bit of an interior threat. I know he doesn't do that all the time, but he's a really versatile player. And, I mean, you sort of look at his performances in the postseason, and yeah, he's had some duds, but so has everyone. I mean, for the most part, Larry, he's been a really good playoff performer. So Jason Tatum, I think it's the popular thing to sort of go against him because he plays for the Celtics, a franchise that has had stars throughout its history, and he's the latest one. And so fans around the NBA, who are getting a little tired of the Celtics winning all the time, you're going to look to Tatum, who's become the star there. And Jaylen Brown is fantastic as well. But Tatum is obviously the one. He's the alpha in Boston, and Brown plays, sort of the number two role really well. He's a star in his own right, but Tatum is a fantastic player on both sides of the ball, right? I mean, it's one thing to be great offensively, and I could understand why NBA fans would sort of go at him if he wasn't a great defender as well, but he is, right? So it's hard to understand the hate and the negativity. I mean, you're always going to get that when you're talking about social media, right? Especially the NBA landscape out there on Twitter and whatnot. It seems like there's just a lot of negativity there. But Jason Tatum, I mean, if you take a step back, Larry, and you really analyze number one, the numbers, number two, the player he is, just watching him, and then the success at this point in his career. I mean, 6-time All-Star, 4-time All-NBA, and now an NBA champ. He's on some path for sure.
So I looked up what you said, that one quote, about the best American-born player today. So that was in April of 24 by Paul Pierce, Celtics legend, if that's the one you were
Yes.
thinking of. Okay.
Hmm.
Paul Pierce with some high praise there. And it's interesting when he says best American player because the NBA today, it's not about American players. It's not just Magic and Bird and Jordan and LeBron. It's pretty much an international league now. You have Jokic, you got Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, you have Luka Doncic. So a lot of international players, and then you have Jason Tatum as well,
I mean,
all at the top.
sorry, Larry. It's just like, there's an argument for LeBron still. He is having a crazy year, but I think Tatum at his age, right, and what he does on both sides of the floor, I think, and what you're saying with all the international stars, right? I mean, for a moment I was like, well, Shea, but I was like, no, he's Canadian. It's tough when you go down the list. I think Kevin Durant is still great, but I mean, playing in Phoenix, he's almost, the Suns as a whole are almost like, I don't want to call them, irrelevant, but they sort of are at this point, right? So it's like a lot of people aren't paying attention to what KD is doing, even though he's still putting up really good numbers. And then the list gets, sort of thinner from there. You have guys who, are all stars, or you can call them superstars, but Tatum, I think, has ascended past all of them, maybe except for LeBron at this point.
Yeah, LeBron is basically beating Father Time at his own game at this point. But you definitely see on social media with Jason Tatum being called corny. And I remember Kevin Garnett when the Celtics won the '08 finals, the iconic anything is possible. And then Jason Tatum did like a we did it thing, and people were clowning him for that. They were like, no, 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 no. Like, back it up there, Tatum. So Tatum is definitely, I would say, top five or maybe at worst top seven. He is one of the best players in the NBA. He has a chance to be a face of the league. I think the face of the league arguments have kind of went a little far recently with do you want that criticism and talking heads, but Tatum is definitely near the top of those lists. So lastly, assuming Boston is essentially guaranteed a spot in the Eastern Conference Finals at minimum, do you see them going to the finals even if they meet, let's say, the red hot Cavaliers, and then going over to the West in the finals potentially? Are they better than Oklahoma City or the Lakers?
It's tough. I mean, Boston, they are the defending champs, and they got to get healthy, right? I mean, you're gonna need Porzingis for this run if you're Boston for sure. He was such a key piece for them last year. The season series is two apiece right now between them and the Cavs. The Cavs are having an unbelievable season. I did not think that at this point they're what 55-10. I mean, I could not have seen that coming from Cleveland. But on paper, Boston is the better team, but what Kenny Atkinson has done with those Cavs, man, I think they play such a complete brand of basketball. And they have their stars as well, no doubt about it. Now, the best player in that series is Jason Tatum. Donovan Mitchell is great and he is a playoff riser for sure. But Tatum is still the number one in that series if they match up with Cleveland. It's so tough. I mean, right? I mean, they're coming off a title last year. If they matched up with the Cavs in the East Finals, I think I would pick the Celtics. But again, it comes down to health because the Cavs, and I think they made a really great acquisition at the deadline, getting DeAndre Hunter. They're a great team as well. It would go 6 or 7. Obviously, they're pretty evenly matched. I mean, I'm taking a look at the games, and it looks like between the 4 games, they've been decided by a total of about 20 points. So, I mean, all the games have pretty much been within 7 or 8 points. I think Boston is still the favorite out of the East, even though the Cavs are having a ridiculous season. They've won like 15 in a row at the time of this podcast to get to 55-10, which is just a ridiculous record. But when you talk about the West, the only team I could see really, matching up with them would be Oklahoma City. I think they're really complete as well when they're healthy. If Jalen Williams, J-Dub is ready to go for them, I think it's a great matchup for Boston. I mean, it would be a great matchup with Boston is what I should say there. Shea against Tatum, that could be a sort of a face of the league conversation there. Although obviously you still have other guys in the mix, but those two guys are sort of the ascending stars in the league, already are stars, but two of the guys who were in those conversations, the moves they made, Oklahoma City, getting Hartenstein, getting Caruso this offseason. If they're fully healthy, it's a 7 game series, and it's one of the best series, one of the best finals we've seen in a long time, I think. I just don't see the Lakers or the Nuggets honestly having enough, Larry. And I mean, I know the Lakers since the Luka trade have been excellent, but even with Luka and LeBron, I just don't think they have enough to match Boston. They're so complete. And I think JJ Redick has done a really great job. But Joe Mazzulla has been there now in a finals twice. And, he's obviously won one now. And I don't know. I think Boston is still the favorite. The combination of now prior success and being the defending champs and knowing what it takes to win one, combined with just the talent they have up and down. And if you do sort of want to touch on this, Larry, the depth they have. I mean, Peyton Pritchard comes off the bench and drops a 40 ball, right? It's crazy. They've turned Luke Cornett into a really nice backup big man. They've got guys pulling from the depths of the bench, giving them quality minutes. Neemias Queta is out there, shutting guys down and then running the floor, grabbing offensive rebounds. It's crazy. The Celtics are a wagon. I think right now they're probably still the favorite, even though Oklahoma City and Cleveland are both having better regular seasons.
So I'm looking at the conference standings as of now. So the Cavs 55-10, the Thunder 54-12, and oh by the way, the Cavs have now had two 15-game winning streaks this season alone. Take that as you will. The Lakers are in fourth. The Cavs are 8.5 games over Boston. I think at this point in time now, unless we see one of the biggest collapses in NBA history, the Cavs are going to lock up the number one seed, and the Thunder are going to lock up the number one seed in their respective conferences. The Thunder are up 12 games over the Grizzlies and Nuggets in the West, so with less than 20 games left, there's no way on the face of the earth that they would blow that unless I just jinx them. I think the Cavs Celtics would be a really cool Eastern Conference Finals. I'm not saying it's a guarantee. Oklahoma City, Boston in the finals would be filthy. If we got Celtics Lakers in the finals, I think the internet would explode based on, oh my gosh, I got to see this again, and the league is rigged or something. But I think these could be good matchups all around. The Celtics, like you said, the depth is off the charts. When you have Peyton Pritchard dropping 40 points, you know you're in trouble. But yeah, I think we can get some good series out of the Celtics in this year's playoffs. They're pretty much locked in at this point, and we will just have to wait and see how that goes. So, Aaron, thank you for hopping on the podcast again. I know I've been wanting to get you back on. Glad to have you, and we will try to get you on in the future.
Thanks so much, my man.
Let's go to our low light, the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz used to be a fun team. These days, no. The Jazz are 15-53, have the worst record in the league, and they're on a 9-game losing streak. Ever since Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert were traded, Utah has committed to rebuilding/tanking for the long haul. Lauri Markkanen, who's in his third season with the Jazz, is the team's building block. He's averaging 19 points and 6 rebounds per game. Helping out Markkanen are players like Walker Kessler, Colin Sexton, and Jordan Clarkson. Kessler leads the NBA in blocks per game with 2.4 now that Victor Wembanyama is out for the year, and he's had a double-double in about half of his games this season. Sexton and Clarkson are reliable scorers, and Clarkson does so off the bench. After all, he was a former 6th man of the year. As of this point, however, I'm not really sure what the direction is in Utah. They have pieces, but they're nowhere close to true contention. The West is loaded, and there's little to no room for the Jazz. Are we even sure Markkanen is a number one option on a championship team? To the draft they go. Their next game is tonight, Monday, March 17th at 9 o'clock. They will host the Chicago Bulls. Let's head over to our random stat. Being traded mid-season is an adjustment for the players and the fans. The player has to learn a new system and move. The fans might have to be patient to see their new player thrive. Jimmy Butler has fit right in on his new team. The Golden State Warriors acquired the disgruntled Butler from Miami at the trade deadline in early February. Since the trade, the Warriors are 14-1 with Butler in the lineup, and they're just above Minnesota to avoid the play-in tournament. If you look at Butler just in the box score, his stats have dipped from his Heat days even with more minutes per game. Butler is converting about 10% less of his shots and about 14% less on triples, but his assists and steals are up from earlier this season. In their latest 7-game winning streak, the Warriors are scoring 118 points and allowing 107 points per game with Butler, an 11-point difference. Not bad. Butler and Draymond Green are two players fans classify as hate to face them but love them when they're on your team. Butler is fiery on the court, and he's not afraid to express what's on his mind. While I can't guarantee the Warriors are going to ride this hot streak to another championship, it's one heck of a start. Finally, let's go to Game of the Week. For this week's Game of the Week, let's do the Washington Wizards at Portland Trail Blazers. This game is tonight, Monday, March 17th at 10 o'clock. Whoa, I know you're thinking. What do you mean Wizards Trailblazers? In this section, we always cover marquee matchups, so let's give the not-so-marquee matchups a chance. Washington is coming off 2 impressive road wins against Detroit and Denver. Yes, Washington swept their season series with Denver. Portland is coming off a tough 1-point overtime loss to New York and a close win over Toronto. Despite the pain these teams give their fan bases, the player matchups should be interesting. Wizards rookie Alex Sarr dropped a career-high 34 points on the Nuggets on Saturday. He's one of the foundational pieces in the nation's capital with Jordan Poole, who stunned Denver near the buzzer on a long triple. Meanwhile, Anthony Simons, Shaedon Sharpe, and Scoot Henderson give opposing backcourts problems. This game should be evenly matched given the inexperience across the board. Give me the Wizards 107-102. Well, that's all the time we have for today. If you haven't already, make sure to follow me on social media. I have 2 X or Twitter accounts and 2 Instagram accounts. The podcast accounts are under @Diehlman_NBA for both X and Instagram. My personal X account is @LarryDiehlman18 and my personal Instagram is @Mr_Sports18. They're also in the description on Buzzsprout, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you to Aaron Hook for being our guest this week on the podcast. Remember, you can follow him on X and Instagram @AaronHook_. And don't forget to spread the word about Diehlman at halftime. See you next time, fellow Hoops fans.